What is up guys, Alex here again, bringing you a 3D motion tracking tutorial. Here's an example of what we're going to be looking at today. So you can see we've got the 3D text tracked within the Black Ops footage, and we got some nice realistic shadows going on here on the floor. So let's crack on. So first off, what we want to do is, I've got this clip, the Nuketown clip, and it's just in QuickTime movie format, and all we want to do is we want to change that to an image sequence ready to import into Boujou and ready to motion track. So to do that, I'm just going to open up After Effects, and you don't have to use After Effects, you can use Final Cut, you can use Sony Vegas, but I just choose to use After Effects, well, just because it's After Effects. So you're going to import your clip, and you can see this is exactly 30 frames per second, and you want to keep a note of the frame rate, because you want to keep a consistent frame rate throughout your whole project, because it's very important to keep a consistent frame rate so it don't get messed up. And all you want to do is just drag down this to the Make New Comp button, and it will make a new composition, all with the exact same frame rate and the size, all ready to render out. So now all we have to do, we don't have to actually do anything to this clip. It's going to go to Composition, Add to Render Queue, and then within the Output module, Lossless, if we double click on that and change the QuickTime movie format to JPEG sequence, and then just hit OK, and then if we go to Output to, we're going to choose a destination to save it to. Now what you're going to do is create a new folder. I'll just call this sequence, hit create, and you're going to want to make sure you create a new folder, because this is going to create around 500 frames, so you definitely want to keep that in a folder, because you don't want 400 frames on your desktop. So make sure to put it in a folder, then just hit save, and then just hit render. And this may take a little while, and within points of this tutorial I will have to come back after rendering and that, so when this is done we'll come back and then be ready to motion track within Boujou. Okay, we're back, and now that After Effects has rendered out our JPEG sequence, we don't really need After Effects anymore, and we'll just take a quick look at the folder that we've just made, just to make sure we know where we are and we're ready to proceed to the next step. Okay, so if we open up the folder that we've just rendered out After Effects in, we can see now we've got all the individual JPEG sequences ready to import into Boujou and then ready to motion track. So now we're going to open up Boujou, we get this interface, and it can be a little bit daunting at first. You look at this and you're like, whoa, but actually it's not too hard to get around once you know what you're doing. And to be fair, we're not even going to be touching some of the features on this, we're just going to be looking at the very basic motion tracking. So all we're going to do is import our sequence that we've just rendered out of After Effects. Just find where you saved the sequence to. Open up the folder and select the first image sequence. So that's the file name 0000, and then just open up the first sequence, and you can see we've got an option here for frame rate. Like I said, when we was in After Effects, that was a 30 frame per second clip. So you want to make sure that within After Effects and Boujou that it's all the same frame rate. That's very important to keep the same frame rate running throughout the whole project. And then once you've selected the frame rate, just hit apply. And close. And now our image sequence is in Boujou, ready to motion track. And now what we're going to do is track the features. And to do that, ironically, we hit the track features button. And then you want to select all frames and then just hit start. And what this is going to do, this is just going to track all the different points within the footage. Can take a little while, so once this is done, I'll join you back ready to camera solve and then export into Cinema 4D. So I'll be back in a sec. Okay, we're back, and now Boujou has tracked all the features within our footage. If we scrub through now, we can see that it's tracked quite nicely actually. Looking good. So the next step that we want to do is the button underneath track features, which is called camera solve. If we just hit camera solve, hit all frames, select optimize camera path smoothness, hit start, and this will take a little bit again, but it won't take that long. You can see that's done it really quick actually. It can be a pretty lengthy process this, because you're doing a lot of rendering and switching between programs like After Effects, Boujou, Cinema 4D, so it can be a pretty lengthy process, but stick with it. Okay, so now that that's done, if we scrub through the timeline, you can see that we've got these yellow and blue dots motion tracked within the footage as if they're actually really there. And that's good, that's what we want. And now if we just click on the Add Scene Geometry button, what we're going to do now is basically tell Boujou where the floor is. So when we import into Cinema 4D, it knows where the floor is, and then we can just put the text on and it's ready to go. So this is where it can get a little bit tricky, because you need a clip. Now this is a pretty good example, because you need a clip that has a clear floor plane, because if you've got a clip, for example, with all these on, all these dots up the walls and stuff, it can get a little tricky. So it's best to have an example clip with a clear floor plane, if you know what I mean, so it's easier for Boujou and Cinema 4D to recognise what the floor is. So all we're going to do is click on the Add Coordinates from Hint and move to around halfway in your timeline. And what you want to do on this bit is only select the dots that are on the floor or where you would like to motion track, because there's no point selecting the ones at the doorway, because that's going to throw Boujou and Cinema 4D right off. You're going to want to select ones that are on the floor. So for the z-axis, that's vertically, so we're going to select this one here and this one here. So you can see we're already running along with the floorboards there, and then change the type to z-axis and then connect to selected, and that's all good. And then we hit Add Coordinates from Hint again, and this time we're going to select the x-axis, which is horizontally. So if we change the type to x-axis, and I'll select this one and this one and hit Connect to Selected. Now you can see that I've done it on the floor as well. Like, there's no point in motion tracking the x-axis all the way up here, because that's going to really throw Boujou off. So keep them on the floor or somewhere around here, like these ones, because there's no point selecting these ones that are on there. There's no point selecting these ones. You want to clearly tell Boujou that this is the floor. You don't want to be saying, "Ah, this is the floor up here," because that's going to completely mess it up. So we're just going to add one more one. So add coordinates from hint. Change the type to origin. Change the type to origin. Yep. And then just hit one that looks fairly in the center of your clip, and then just connect to selected. And then once we've done all that, update coordinates to frame. Double check that that's done, and then hit close. And that's all we need to do. Now if we go up to the top menu and hit the 3D button, and if you hold shift, you can move around now, and you can see sort of, if you move there, this has done it right, because you can see that we've got all the floor ones. So these are the ones that are on the floor. If we go back into 2D mode, you can see that these are the floor, and the floor's not all the way up over here or in some other direction. It's all looking where it's supposed to be. And this is a good way to check that it's all ready to motion track before you head on into Cinema 4D, just to make sure that it's all looking right. So if you can imagine the scene there, got the stairs probably going up here, and we've got that little hut thing over here. If we select these, go back into 2D mode, you can see we've got this little hut here. So this 3D mode is a good way of just getting a rough idea of if your clip's going to be looking right. And this is why it's so important to tell Boujou a clear floor plane, because this is where it starts to get messed up if you're not doing it right and you're not telling Boujou that this is the floor and so on. So now if we go back into 2D mode, what we can do is add test object. And what's that going to do is just, by the looks of it, put a little ladybird in the scene. And don't worry, that's not going to be in the scene. This is just a test object to make sure it's all motion tracked properly. So if we scrub through now, you can see that the ladybird's staying where it should be, and that's looking good. So I recommend using the test object and using this 3D mode to test just before you export it out, just to test that it's all looking good. And to be fair, that's looking perfect really. Cool. So now all we have to do is click on export camera solve, and choose a destination to save it to. I'll just save it on my desktop. Call this touch solve. Hit save, and you want to change the export type from After Effects to Cinema 4D. And then this is very important as well. Scale scene by, instead of 1, you want to change this to 100. And that's very important to keep that as 100. And then just hit save. And once that's saved, we're ready to head on into Cinema 4D. Okay, so now we're in Cinema 4D. What we're going to do is just go up to File, and now we're just going to import or open the camera solve that we've just saved out of After Effects. After Effects Boujou, I mean. So the touch solve that I've just literally saved out of Boujou. If we click open, And this is important as well. The scale, you want to make sure that it's on 10 and not 100. So make sure that's on 10 before you open it up in After Effects. Why do I keep saying After Effects? Cinema 4D. Okay, that looks pretty good to open. Okay, so if we just open up the timeline a little bit, and we scrub through now, it's looking good. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we want to add a new background. So click on the background tab, just open that up. And what we're going to do is create a new material, file, new material. My computer's on a bit of a go slow because I've got all these programs open, but we'll crack on anyway. So open up your material browser, turn off specular, and then within the colour channel, hit texture, load image, and what we're going to do is we're going to find the clip, the original clip. So this is before the clip before we made the image sequence in After Effects. So the original clip. Just open that up. Just click no for this. And then what this is going to do, this is going to upload the video file, and then we're going to drag it over to the background, and then the background will have our video file ready to add some text to, and then some shadows and all that good stuff. So once that's done, just drag the material over to your background and just drop it onto the background. Cool, so we can see now if we scrub through, looking good, looking good. So now if we, for example, add a MoGraph text object, just change this to acres, and line it up to where we want it to be. Around there is good. And if we scrub through the timeline now, you can see that the text is motion tracked. She's good. It's where we want to be. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to add shadows to the scene, and to do that, I'm going to click on this tab, open up a new floor, and the same material that's on the background, just want to drag the same material to the floor, and then select the material of the floor and change the projection to frontal. Is right click on the floor, Cinema 4D tags, and add a compositing tag. And with that selected, you want to turn off self shadowing and turn on compositing background. And what that's going to do, that's going to, if we render now, if we just have a quick preview, you can see now we've got the floor, but that's good because we can't actually see it when we render, and that's what we want. So if we add a light now and move it up a little bit, and we go on the shadow of the light, change it to shadow map soft, change the density to around 50. Cool. And if we render now, you can see that we've got these really nice shadows, and you can also add another light to light up the rest of the text. Move this over. Looking good. So now if we scrub through the timeline, you can see that the text is motion tracked, as well as the shadows, and the shadows will follow the text as well, which is nice. And also, one thing to bear in mind is, when dealing with the shadows, is have a look at your clip and see where the shadows are facing on there, because you want to try and move the light and have the light in the same place as where it would be in the clip, so you can see that the shadows are facing towards us and it's behind the house. So we want to try and move this light somewhere behind the house, or as if it's behind the house. So that's one thing to bear in mind, is have a look at the shadows on the floor of the clip originally, and then just try and match up the light to try and get the same sort of effect. So that's looking pretty good. Maybe we could do with moving it over a little bit, about there. Yep, that's looking nice. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for today's tutorial. Post your videos as a response. I'd like to see all your motion tracking stuff, so make sure to post as a response, and make sure to leave your feedback in the comment box below. And if you're having trouble with this, leave a comment and I'll do my best to try and answer your problems, because this can be a pretty hard sort of process to do. So if you're having any trouble whatsoever, just leave a comment and either me or maybe some of the other subscribers can try and help you. So thanks for watching, really appreciate it. Catch you later.